That night I realized one dinner could destroy a family. My name is Gloria Jenkins. I'm 67 years old, and this is the story I kept to myself for far too long. I need to tell you about a small silver picture frame I've kept on my nightstand for 40 years. Inside it, there's a photo of my son Daniel when he was 5, holding my hand at the county fair. His eyes were full of wonder then, full of love. That frame has traveled with me through 3 different houses, 2 surgeries, and 1 divorce. I dusted it every Sunday morning without fail. I never imagined that one day I'd turn that frame face down. It was a Friday evening in late September when Daniel invited me to dinner at the Garden Room, that fancy restaurant downtown with the white tablecloths and the piano music. He said he had news, good news. His voice on the phone sounded excited, almost like that little boy at the fair again. I wore my navy dress, the one I saved for special occasions. I even put on the pearl earrings his father gave me 30 years ago. I arrived early because that's what I do. I sat at the table and waited, watching the door, my heart full of that particular joy only a mother knows when her child wants to share something important. Daniel walked in with Melissa. She was beautiful in that sharp, polished way. Dark hair pulled back tight, red lips, a dress that probably cost more than my monthly pension. She worked in marketing or advertising, something like that. They'd been dating for 8 months, but I'd only met her twice before. Both times, she'd been polite but distant, like I was a piece of furniture she had to walk around. Daniel kissed my cheek. "Mom, you look nice." "Thank you, sweetheart." We ordered. Small talk floated across the table like dust in sunlight. The weather, traffic, the new coffee shop on 5th Street. Melissa checked her phone twice. Daniel seemed nervous, fidgeting with his napkin. Then he cleared his throat. "Mom, we have something to tell you." He reached across the table and took Melissa's hand. She smiled, and for the first time that evening, her face softened. "We're engaged." My heart opened like a window on the first day of spring. "Oh, Daniel. Oh, sweetheart, that's wonderful." I stood up. I wanted to hug him. I wanted to hold my son the way I did when he was small and the world was simple. But before I could move around the table, Melissa spoke. "We're planning the wedding for next June. We've already booked the Riverside estate." That's beautiful," I said, still standing awkwardly between my chair and the table. "I'm so happy for you both." "It's going to be elegant," Melissa continued, scrolling through her phone. 150 guests, outdoor ceremony, string quartet. We're working with a wedding planner who did the Morrison wedding last year. You know, the tech executive? I didn't know, but I nodded and smiled because that's what mothers do. "And Mom," Daniel said, "we wanted to tell you first, before anyone else." Something warm bloomed in my chest. He wanted to tell me first. We ate. The food was good, though I barely tasted it. Daniel talked about the proposal, how he'd done it on a beach in Monterey, how Melissa had cried. Melissa showed me the ring, a diamond so big it caught every bit of light in the room. I said all the right things. I asked all the right questions. Then came dessert. The waiter brought a chocolate cake with 3 forks. Melissa was talking about the guest list, about people I'd never heard of, about seating charts and color schemes. I was listening, really listening, trying to memorize every detail because this was my son's wedding, and I wanted to be part of it. "And of course," Melissa said, dabbing her lips with her napkin, "we'll need to discuss your contribution, Gloria." The way she said my name felt cold. "My contribution?" I asked softly. "Well, traditionally the groom's family contributes to the wedding costs." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "We're looking at about $70,000 total. We thought a third from your side would be fair. Around $23,000. The room tilted slightly. $23,000. I lived on a pension of $1,800 a month. I'd been saving for 5 years just to replace my 15-year-old car. $23,000 was more money than I'd seen in one place since I sold the house after the divorce. I don't have that kind of money," I said quietly. Melissa's smile froze. Daniel looked down at his plate. "Mom," he said, and there was something in his voice I'd never heard before. Embarrassment. Shame. "You own your condo. You could take out a loan, use it as collateral." My hands were shaking. I placed them in my lap where no one could see. "Daniel, sweetheart, I worked 32 years to pay off that condo. It's the only security I have. If something happens to me, if I get sick—" "You're not going to get sick," Melissa interrupted. Her voice had lost all its polish. "You're being dramatic." "I'm being realistic," I said. "I'm 67 years old. I have arthritis and high blood pressure. My medications alone cost $400 a month even with insurance. I can't risk losing my home." Melissa leaned back in her chair. She looked at Daniel, then at me, and something cruel flickered across her face. "So you won't help your own son on the most important day of his life?" "That's not what I said." "It's exactly what you said." The restaurant felt too hot suddenly, too bright. I looked at Daniel, waiting for him to defend me, waiting for him to tell Melissa that it was okay, that they'd figure something out, that he understood. But he didn't. He sat there looking at his half-eaten cake, saying nothing. "Mom," he finally said, "other parents help their kids. Melissa's parents are paying for most of it. Can't you just, I don't know, figure something out?" "I'm trying to explain." "You're making excuses." Those words hit me like a slap. "Excuse me?" Daniel looked up, and I saw it then. The resentment, the disappointment, like I'd failed him somehow. "You always do this," he said. "Whenever I need something, you have a reason why you can't help. When I wanted to go to that music camp in high school, you said we couldn't afford it. When I needed money for my apartment deposit, you made me take out a loan. And now, for my wedding, you're doing it again." My throat closed up. I couldn't breathe properly. "Daniel, I worked 2 jobs to put you through college. I drove a car with no heat for 3 winters because I was saving for your tuition. I wore the same winter coat for 12 years. Everything I had, I gave to you. But you won't give me this." Melissa touched his arm. "Baby, it's fine. We'll figure it out. Some people just don't understand the importance of family." That's when Daniel said it. He looked right at me, and his eyes were cold. "You're ridiculous, Mom." The word hung in the air like smoke. Ridiculous. I stayed silent. What could I say? My own son had just told me I was ridiculous for not mortgaging my home to pay for tablecloths and string quartets. I placed my napkin on the table very carefully. My hands had stopped shaking. Everything inside me had gone very still and very quiet. "I need to use the restroom," I said. I stood up and walked through the restaurant on legs that didn't quite feel like mine. In the bathroom, I locked myself in a stall and pressed my hand against my mouth so no one would hear me cry. When I came back to the table 10 minutes later, Daniel and Melissa were laughing about something on her phone. They barely noticed I'd been gone. I paid for my part of the meal. Daniel let me. On the drive home, I couldn't remember a single song on the radio. When I got to my condo, I walked straight to my bedroom and turned that silver picture frame face down. Sometimes we trust people we shouldn't. Have you ever been disappointed by someone you loved? Tell me your story in the comments. I'd love to hear it. Before I tell you what happened next, you need to understand the life I built. I wasn't born Gloria Jenkins. I was Gloria Marie Santos, daughter of Portuguese immigrants who came to California with nothing but calloused hands and stubborn hope. My father worked in the canneries. My mother cleaned houses. They taught me that dignity wasn't something you were born with. It was something you earned through honest work and keeping your word. I married young, 22 years old, wearing my mother's altered wedding dress, standing beside Robert Jenkins in a small church that smelled like lemon polish and old hymnals. Robert was handsome in that easy, uncomplicated way. He worked construction. He made me laugh. He promised me a good life. We had Daniel when I was 25. The moment they placed that baby in my arms, I understood what my mother meant when she said, "A child changes the shape of your heart." Daniel was perfect. 10 fingers, 10 toes, and eyes that looked at me like I was the whole world. For years we were happy in the simple way working people are happy. We lived in a small rental house with a porch where Daniel learned to ride his bike. Robert worked long hours, but he came home. I worked part-time at the elementary school cafeteria so I could be home when Daniel got off the bus. We had spaghetti dinners and Saturday cartoons and birthday cakes made from scratch. Then Daniel turned 8, and Robert started staying late at work. At first, I believed him. Construction projects run over. Traffic is terrible. The guys wanted to grab a beer. But wives know. We know the way a man's eyes slide away when he's lying. We know the smell of perfume that isn't ours. We know the distance that grows in a marriage like frost on a window. I found the hotel receipt in his truck, the Valentine's Day card in his glove compartment, signed by someone named Denise. I confronted him on a Tuesday night after Daniel had gone to bed. Robert didn't deny it. He just looked tired. "I'm not happy, Gloria." 4 words that dismantled 12 years. He moved out that weekend. The divorce took 8 months. He married Denise 6 months after that. They moved to Arizona. Daniel was 10 years old when his father stopped calling every week, 11 when the calls became monthly, 13 when they stopped altogether. I became both parents. I took a full-time job as an administrative assistant at a medical supply company. It paid $32,000 a year, which wasn't much, but it was steady. It had benefits. On weekends, I cleaned offices downtown to save extra money. Daniel never knew. I told him I was working late at the main job. I attended every parent-teacher conference, every school play, every basketball game, even though Daniel spent most of the time on the bench. I packed his lunches with notes tucked inside. "You're going to do great things, sweetheart. Love, Mom." When he got into college, I cried for an hour in my car because I was so proud and so terrified about how I'd pay for it. I took out loans. I picked up overtime. I stopped buying new clothes, stopped going to the hair salon, stopped doing anything that cost money if it wasn't for Daniel. The college fund I'd started when he was born had disappeared in the divorce settlement. Robert was supposed to help with tuition, but after 3 years in Arizona, he stopped returning my calls about it, so I handled it alone. Daniel graduated with a degree in business administration. I was there in the crowd, taking pictures with a camera I'd bought at a yard sale, my heart so full I thought it might burst. He hugged me after the ceremony. "I couldn't have done this without you, Mom." That hug carried me through the next 5 years of paying off his student loans, the loans I'd co-signed, the loans he said he'd help pay back once he got a good job. He got a good job. He moved to the city. He bought a car, a nice one. He rented an apartment in a building with a gym and a doorman. The loan payments kept coming to my mailbox. I paid them. I never mentioned it. What kind of mother would I be if I held his future hostage over money? I retired at 62. My pension was small, but I'd finally paid off the condo I'd bought after selling the rental house. It was a 1-bedroom place in a quiet neighborhood. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. The first thing I'd ever owned that no bank or ex-husband had a claim to. I thought I'd done well. I thought I'd built something solid. Then came that dinner at the garden room, and my son called me ridiculous. That night, lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, I thought about all those years, all those sacrifices that Daniel never saw because I made sure he wouldn't. I'd given him a childhood without worry. I'd given him an education without debt weighing him down. I'd given him the space to become whoever he wanted to be. And somehow, in all that giving, he'd learned to expect it. He'd learned that my purpose was to provide, and his purpose was to receive. The unfairness of it settled in my chest like a stone. I got up and made chamomile tea the way my mother used to when I couldn't sleep. I sat at my small kitchen table and watched the steam rise from the cup. The condo was quiet. It was always quiet. Daniel used to visit once a month. Then it became every other month, then holidays, then just Christmas. I wondered when I'd become invisible to him. I wondered when my love had become something he resented rather than cherished. The tea grew cold while I sat there thinking about the picture frame lying face down in my bedroom, and about the little boy at the county fair who used to hold my hand like I was the only safe thing in the world. I didn't sleep that night, but something in me started to wake up. The next morning, I woke to pale sunlight filtering through my bedroom curtains. For a moment, I forgot about the dinner. Then I remembered, and the weight of it pressed down on me like a hand on my chest. I got up slowly. My knees ached the way they do most mornings now. I took my blood pressure medication with a glass of water and started the coffee maker. Saturday morning, no plans, no one to call. I thought about calling Daniel. I thought about apologizing, even though I wasn't sure what I'd be apologizing for. For not having $23,000? For working 2 jobs instead of building wealth? For being ridiculous? But I didn't call. Something in me had shifted overnight, like a door closing quietly in an empty house. I drank my coffee and read the newspaper. An article about inflation. An article about retirement savings, an article about how more and more older Americans were going into debt to help their adult children. I closed the paper and stared at the wall. Around 10 o'clock, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but I did, because I always do. Hello? Good morning. May I speak with Gloria Jenkins? Speaking. Mrs. Jenkins, this is Thomas Whitmore from First National Bank. I'm calling regarding a loan application. My stomach dropped. I didn't apply for any loan. No, ma'am, you didn't. Your son, Daniel Jenkins, applied for a secured personal loan yesterday afternoon. He listed you as a co-signer and provided information about your property as collateral. The coffee in my stomach turned to acid. He did what? He applied for a loan of $25,000, secured against the property at 42 Cedar Lane, Unit 3B. According to our records, you're the sole owner of that property. However, we cannot proceed without your signature and consent. I couldn't speak. I couldn't breathe. Daniel had tried to use my home as collateral, without asking me, without telling me, less than 24 hours after calling me ridiculous for not wanting to risk it. Mrs. Jenkins, are you still there? Yes, I whispered. I'm here. I'm calling because the application cannot be approved under your son's name alone. His credit score and debt-to-income ratio don't meet our lending requirements. However, given your clean credit history and the equity in your property, the loan could be approved if you were the primary borrower with your son as co-signer. If I were the primary borrower. Yes, ma'am. Meaning I would be responsible for the payments. Correct. Your son could make the payments on your behalf, but legally, the obligation would be yours. If payments weren't made, the property would be at risk. I closed my eyes. Mrs. Jenkins, I should mention that your son seemed quite confident you would agree to this arrangement. He indicated that you'd discussed it and that you were supportive of helping with wedding expenses. Wedding expenses. He'd lied to the bank. He'd lied and tried to trap me into a loan I'd explicitly refused. Mr. Whitmore, I said, and my voice was steadier than I expected. I do not consent to this loan. I did not discuss this with my son, and I do not authorize the use of my property as collateral. I understand. For our records, may I confirm that you're declining to co-sign or serve as primary borrower for this application? Yes, I am declining. Very well. I'll note that in the file. The application will be denied. Is there anything else I can help you with today? I thought about it. Then I asked, Mr. Whitmore, if someone tries to use my property as collateral without my permission again, will you call me? There was a pause. Mrs. Jenkins, I'm not supposed to share this, but your son seemed upset when I told him the application would need your direct involvement. He asked if there was any way to proceed without informing you. I told him that would be fraud. Fraud. My son had tried to commit fraud against his own mother. Thank you for telling me, I said quietly. And yes, please flag my property. I want to be notified of any future applications. I'll make a note. Take care, Mrs. Jenkins. He hung up. I sat at my kitchen table, holding my phone, watching the morning light move across the floor. Daniel hadn't called to apologize for the dinner. He hadn't called to talk about the loan conversation. He'd gone straight home and tried to take what I wouldn't give. The betrayal was so complete, so thorough, that I felt almost calm. I thought about all the years I'd protected him, from his father's abandonment, from financial stress, from the harshness of the world. I'd been a shield, and he'd grown up thinking shields were meant to be used, not honored. My phone buzzed. A text message. Daniel, Mom, the bank called you, didn't they? I stared at the message. No apology, no explanation. Just annoyance that his plan had failed. I typed carefully. Yes, they did. 3 dots appeared immediately. He was typing. Daniel, I was going to tell you. I just wanted to see if it was even possible first. You made such a big deal about it at dinner, I figured I'd handle it myself. Handle it himself, by using my home without permission. Daniel, Melissa's parents think you're being selfish. They're paying $40,000. Her dad said it's embarrassing that you won't help. Embarrassing? Selfish? Ridiculous? As I tell you this, I wonder where you're listening from. Write your city below so I can feel a little closer to you. I set the phone down without responding. I walked to my bedroom and picked up the silver picture frame. I looked at that little boy holding my hand, his face full of trust and joy. I tried to find him in the man who'd just called me selfish. I tried to find any trace of the child I'd raised, but he was gone. I placed the frame in my dresser drawer, underneath some old sweaters. Then I sat on the edge of my bed and cried, not for the betrayal, but for the years I'd lost trying to be enough for someone who would never think I was. When the tears stopped, I washed my face and looked at myself in the bathroom mirror. I was 67 years old. I'd survived a cheating husband, financial hardship, loneliness, and heartbreak. I'd raised a son alone. I'd worked until my hands hurt. I'd built a small, safe life from nothing, and I was done apologizing for it. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Daniel. I didn't look at it. Instead, I made a decision that would change everything. I didn't answer Daniel's texts for 3 days. He sent 7 of them. Each one was a small masterpiece of manipulation. The first 2 were defensive. You're overreacting. I was just exploring options. Then came guilt. I can't believe you're ignoring me over this. I'm your son. Finally, anger. Fine. If you want to ruin my wedding, that's on you. I read each one calmly and did not respond. On Monday morning, I called my lawyer. Her name was Patricia Chen, and I'd used her services twice before. Once for the divorce, once when I bought the condo. She was direct, efficient, and kind in the way of people who've seen too much to be shocked by anything. "Gloria," she said warmly when I walked into her office. "It's been a while. What can I do for you?" I told her everything. The dinner, the loan application, the texts. I spoke clearly and without crying, which surprised me. Patricia listened without interrupting, her hands folded on her desk. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. "I'm sorry," she said. "That's a profound betrayal. Hearing someone else say it made it real." "What do you recommend?" I asked. "First, we put a credit freeze on your accounts and property. If Daniel tries this again, he'll hit a wall. Second, we draft a cease and desist letter making it clear that any future attempts to use your property without consent will result in legal action. Legal action against my own son. Legal action against fraud," Patricia corrected gently. "What he did wasn't a mistake, Gloria. It was calculated. He knew you'd said no. He proceeded anyway." I nodded slowly. "There's something else I'd like to discuss," I said. "My will." Patricia raised an eyebrow. "Your will?" "Currently, Daniel is my sole beneficiary. The condo, my savings account, everything goes to him. I want to change that." "Are you sure? This is an emotional time. You might want to—" "I'm sure." Patricia studied my face. Whatever she saw there made her nod. "All right. Who would you like to designate as your beneficiary?" I'd thought about this all weekend. "I want to establish a scholarship fund for first-generation college students whose parents can't afford to help them. I want the condo sold after I'm gone and the proceeds, along with whatever savings I have, to go into that fund." Patricia smiled. A real smile, not a professional one. "That's beautiful, Gloria. And I want Daniel to know, not now, but eventually. I want him to understand that actions have consequences." We spent the next hour going through paperwork, credit freeze forms, a new will, a letter to be delivered to Daniel only if he attempted any further financial manipulation. When I left Patricia's office, I felt lighter than I had in days. That evening, my phone rang. Daniel's name appeared on the screen. I answered. "Hello, Daniel." "Mom." His voice was tight. "You've been ignoring me." "I've been thinking." "About what?" "About boundaries." Silence. "What does that mean?" he asked carefully. "It means I've placed a credit freeze on my accounts and property. It means if you try to use my home as collateral again, you'll be committing a crime. It means I've spoken to a lawyer." "You spoke to a lawyer? About me?" "About protecting myself." "I can't believe this." His voice rose. "I'm your son. I made one mistake, and you're treating me like a criminal? You tried to take out a fraudulent loan using my home. That's not a mistake, Daniel. That's a choice. I was going to make the payments. Like you made the payments on your student loans?" The words came out before I could stop them. 20 years of silence, broken in one sentence. "What are you talking about?" "I paid those loans, Daniel. All of them. Every month for 5 years after you graduated. You said you'd help once you got a good job. You never did. I never asked, but I paid them." He didn't respond. I have sacrificed for you your entire life, I continued, and my voice was steady now, clear. I worked 2 jobs. I wore the same winter coat for 12 years. I drove a car with a broken heater. I did it gladly, because you were my son, and I loved you. But love is not the same as obligation, and sacrifice is not the same as slavery. Mom, I will not mortgage my home for a wedding. I will not risk my security so you can have string quartets and chocolate fountains. If that makes me selfish, if that makes me ridiculous, then so be it. Melissa was right about you, he said, and his voice was cold now. You're bitter. You're jealous that I have a good life, and you're stuck in that little condo, alone. That hurt. It was meant to. But I didn't flinch. I'm not bitter, Daniel. I'm just done being used. I can't believe you're doing this. What am I supposed to tell Melissa? What am I supposed to tell her parents? Tell them the truth. Tell them your mother doesn't have $23,000. Tell them she's a retired woman on a fixed income who worked her whole life to have a small amount of security. Tell them whatever you want, but you will not tell them I'm the villain in this story. So that's it? You're just cutting me off? I'm not cutting you off. I'm setting boundaries. There's a difference. He laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. You know what? Fine. Don't come to the wedding. We don't need you there anyway. The line went dead. I set the phone down gently. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from release. I walked to my bedroom and opened the dresser drawer. The silver picture frame was still there beneath the sweaters. I picked it up and looked at that little boy one more time. Then I placed it in a box with some other old photographs and carried the box to the hall closet. I didn't need to see him every day anymore. The child in that photo was gone. The man who remained had made his choices. Now I was making mine. That night I cooked myself a proper dinner. Salmon with roasted vegetables, something I rarely made just for myself. I ate slowly, tasting each bite. I played music, old jazz records my father used to love. I sat by the window and watched the street below, where ordinary people lived ordinary lives. And for the first time in months, I felt something like peace. I still wonder if I did the right thing. What about you? What would you have done in my place? The weeks that followed were the quietest of my life. Daniel didn't call. He didn't text. It was as if, by refusing to be used, I'd ceased to exist. At first, the silence hurt. I'd catch myself reaching for my phone, wanting to check if he'd messaged, wanting to apologize, to smooth things over, to make myself small again so he'd love me again. But then I'd remember the loan application, the lies to the bank, the word fraud, and I'd set the phone down. October arrived with cool mornings and leaves turning amber. I started walking every day, something I'd never made time for before. There was a park 3 blocks from my condo with a path that circled a small pond. I'd walk the loop twice, sometimes 3 times, watching the ducks and the changing sky. Other retired women walked there too. We'd nod to each other, smile politely. After 2 weeks, one of them spoke to me. Beautiful morning, isn't it? She was about my age, maybe a little older, with silver hair cut short and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. It is, I agreed. I'm Margaret, she said, extending her hand. Gloria. We walked together that morning, and the next, and the next. Margaret was a widow. Her husband had died 3 years earlier from a heart attack. She had 2 daughters, both living out of state, both busy with their own lives. Do you miss them? I asked one morning as we sat on a bench, watching the ducks. Every day, she said. But I've learned something about children. We raise them to leave us. That's the whole point. If we've done our job right, they don't need us anymore. They want us, hopefully, but they don't need us. What if they don't want you either? Margaret looked at me with those kind eyes. Then you learn to want yourself. I thought about that all day. Want yourself. I'd spent 67 years wanting to be wanted. By my husband, by my son, by anyone who might prove I had value. I'd measured my worth by how much I could give, how much I could sacrifice, how much pain I could endure silently. It had never occurred to me to want myself. That night, I did something I hadn't done in 40 years. I signed up for a class. The community college offered continuing education courses for seniors: photography, watercolor painting, creative writing, Italian for beginners. I chose watercolor. The first class was on a Thursday evening. I walked into a room full of strangers, mostly women my age, a few men, everyone looking slightly nervous. The instructor was a woman in her 50s with paint-stained fingers and an easy smile. "Welcome," she said. "I'm Linda. This class is for anyone who's ever wanted to paint but was afraid they weren't good enough. Here's the secret. None of us are good enough. We're just here to enjoy the process." Something in me relaxed. We painted simple things that first night. Color wheels, basic brush strokes. My hands were clumsy and my color mixing was terrible. But I didn't care. I was doing something just for me, and there was a strange joy in that. After class, a woman approached me. She was around my age, black, with beautiful silver locks and a gentle smile. "First time painting?" she asked. "Is it that obvious?" She laughed. "I'm Diane. Also my first time. Want to grab coffee? There's a place down the street that's still open." I said yes. We sat in a small cafe with chipped mugs and weak coffee, and we talked, really talked. Diane had been a nurse for 35 years. She was divorced. She had 3 sons, all grown. One was a teacher, one was in the military. One was in prison for drug possession. "The hardest thing," she said, stirring her coffee slowly, "is accepting that you can't save them from their own choices. I spent years trying to fix my youngest, paid for rehab twice, let him live with me 3 different times, bailed him out, literally and figuratively. What happened? I had to stop. I had to let him fall and hope he'd find a way to stand up. It nearly killed me, but I realized I was enabling him by catching him every time. Some people have to hit bottom before they'll climb." I told her about Daniel, about the dinner and the loan and the silence. She listened without judgment. "You did the right thing," she said finally. "It doesn't feel like it now, but you taught him something important. You taught him that you're a person with limits, not just a resource tentar novamente f, continuar to be extracted." We finished our coffee and exchanged phone numbers. Walking home that night, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. I felt like myself. November came. The trees were bare now, skeletal against gray skies. Thanksgiving was approaching, and I'd always spent it with Daniel. Even after he moved to the city, he'd come home for turkey and stuffing and pumpkin pie. I wondered if he'd call this year. He didn't. 3 days before Thanksgiving, I received a text from an unknown number. "Hi, Gloria. This is Melissa. Daniel told me you two had a disagreement. I think it's important for family to stay together, especially during the holidays. We'd like to invite you to Thanksgiving at my parents' house. It would mean a lot to Daniel." I read the message 3 times. Not an apology. An invitation delivered as a favor, as if I should be grateful to be included. And the phrasing, "It would mean a lot to Daniel," as if my presence was a gift I should give him, not a relationship that required his effort too. I typed carefully. "Thank you for the invitation, but I've made other plans. I hope you both have a lovely holiday." I had made other plans. Margaret had invited me to join her and some friends for Thanksgiving, a potluck at the community center. I'd agreed to bring sweet potato casserole. Melissa responded immediately, "Other plans? With who?" The audacity of that question, as if I needed to justify my life to her. I didn't respond. Thanksgiving Day was surprisingly wonderful. Margaret's friend group consisted of 6 women, all widowed or divorced, all fiercely independent and genuinely kind. We ate too much, we laughed, we told stories about our lives, our mistakes, our small victories. No one asked me about children. No one pitied me for being alone. I wasn't alone. I was choosing my company carefully. That night, lying in bed, I thought about Daniel sitting at Melissa's parents' table. I wondered if he'd noticed my absence. I wondered if he'd felt even a fraction of the loneliness I'd felt all those months when he was too busy to call. Part of me hoped he did. Part of me hoped he was learning what it felt like to lose someone you took for granted. December arrived with the first frost. The watercolor class continued every Thursday. I was getting better. Not great, but better. I'd painted a pond scene that actually looked like a pond. Linda had put it up on the board as an example of capturing light. I took a photo of it and almost sent it to Daniel. Almost, but I didn't. Because I realized I wasn't painting for his approval. I was painting because it made me happy. Margaret and I had coffee twice a week now. Diane from the painting class joined us sometimes. We talked about everything. Books, politics, the difficulty of aging in a world that makes you invisible, the strange freedom of no longer caring what people think. My sister told me I'm being selfish, Margaret said one morning. She thinks I should move closer to my daughters, help with the grandkids, but I don't want to be on-call childcare. I've raised my children. These are my years now. Good for you, Diane said firmly. We spend our whole lives serving other people. There's nothing wrong with serving ourselves for once. I thought about that word. Selfish. Daniel had called me selfish. Melissa's parents thought I was selfish. But was it selfish to protect yourself? Was it selfish to refuse to risk everything for someone else's party? Or was it just healthy? Christmas approached. I bought myself a small tree and decorated it with ornaments I'd collected over the years. Some of them were Daniel's. Handmade clay stars from elementary school, popsicle stick reindeer, a photo ornament from his high school graduation. I hung them all. They were part of my history, even if he was no longer part of my present. On December 23rd, my phone rang. Daniel's name on the screen. My heart jumped despite everything, despite the hurt and the anger and the boundaries, because he was still my son and some part of me would always hope. I answered, "Mom." "Hello, Daniel. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas." Silence. Then, "I'm calling to let you know we've set a date. June 14th. The invitations go out next week." "I see. You'll get one," Melissa insisted. "She thinks it's important to include you even though—" He trailed off. "Even though what?" "Even though you've made it clear you don't support us." My grip tightened on the phone. "I never said I don't support you, Daniel. I said I can't mortgage my home to pay for your wedding." "Same thing." "It's not the same thing at all." He sighed, that impatient sound I'd heard so many times lately. "Look, I'm calling because it's Christmas and because Melissa thought I should. So there." I called. "You'll get your invitation. You can come or not. I honestly don't care anymore." "Then why call?" "I don't know, Mom. Why do any of us do anything?" He hung up. I sat there holding the phone, staring at my little Christmas tree with its mismatched ornaments and its blinking lights. I honestly don't care anymore. Those words should have hurt more than they did. But mostly, I just felt tired. Tired of hoping he'd see me. Tired of waiting for him to grow into the man I'd believed he could be. Tired of mourning a relationship he'd already abandoned. That night, I took those clay stars and popsicle reindeer off the tree. I packed them carefully in tissue paper and put them in the same box with the silver picture frame. Then I went to Target and bought new ornaments. Simple, elegant ones in silver and blue. I redecorated the tree completely. When I finished, it looked nothing like the tree I'd always had. It looked like something new, something mine. The invitation arrived in mid-January, tucked inside a heavy cream envelope with calligraphy so elaborate I could barely read my own name. Mrs. Gloria Jenkins. Not Mom, not even Gloria. Just the formal title, as if I were a distant relative they felt obligated to acknowledge. I opened it, standing at my mailbox. The card inside was thick, expensive. Embossed gold lettering announced the wedding of Melissa Catherine Morrison and Daniel Robert Jenkins on June 14th at the Riverside Estate. Reception to follow. Black tie optional. At the bottom, in smaller print, adults-only celebration. I carried it inside and placed it on my kitchen table. For 3 days, I looked at that invitation every time I walked past. I didn't know what to do with it. Throwing it away felt too final. Accepting felt impossible. On the 4th day, Margaret came over for tea. She saw the invitation immediately. "That's beautiful," she said, picking it up. Then she read it more carefully and set it down gently. "How do you feel?" "I don't know." We sat with our tea, the invitation between us like a small white accusation. "Are you going to go?" Margaret asked. "I don't know that either. What does your heart tell you?" I laughed, a small, sad sound. My heart is confused. Part of me wants to go because he's my son, and I've imagined his wedding day since he was born. Part of me knows that if I go, I'll be sitting in that church, watching him marry someone who thinks I'm selfish, watching him start a life that I'm not really part of, and it will break something in me that hasn't quite broken yet. Margaret nodded slowly. When my daughter got married, I wasn't invited. I looked up, startled. What? It was 8 years ago. We'd had a falling out over her husband. He was controlling, isolating her from friends, from me. I told her I was worried. She told me I was jealous and interfering. They eloped. I found out from Facebook. Margaret, I'm so sorry. It nearly destroyed me, she continued quietly. I kept thinking I should apologize, should beg forgiveness for crimes I didn't commit, just to be let back into her life. But my therapist asked me something important. If you apologize for seeing the truth, what are you teaching your daughter? What happened? I didn't apologize. 2 years later, she left him. It took her another year to call me. When she finally did, she said, "You were right, Mom. I'm sorry I shut you out. We're close now. Better than before." But it took her hitting her own bottom to understand. I thought about that, about truth and time and the patience required to let people find their own way. "Do you regret not forcing your way back in?" I asked. "Every day for those 3 years. But looking back, no. She needed to learn that I wasn't her enemy. I couldn't teach her that by making myself smaller." The invitation sat between us, silent and expensive. I think," I said slowly, "I think if I go to that wedding, I'll be telling Daniel that his behavior is acceptable, that he can betray me, ignore me, use me, and I'll still show up with a smile and a gift because that's what mothers do. And if you don't go, then I'm teaching him that actions have consequences, even with me, especially with me." Margaret reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Gloria, you've already given him the most important gift. You've shown him that you're a person with dignity and boundaries. Whether he learns from that is up to him now." That night, I wrote a response, not a long one, not an emotional one. "Dear Daniel and Melissa, thank you for the invitation to your wedding. After careful consideration, I've decided not to attend. I wish you both happiness and a beautiful day. With love, Mom." I addressed the envelope, stamped it, and walked it to the mailbox before I could change my mind. When I dropped it in, I felt something lift from my shoulders. February passed quietly. The painting class continued. Margaret, Diane, and I started having Sunday brunch together at a little diner that served enormous pancakes. I volunteered once a week at the public library, shelving books and helping older patrons with the computers. My life was small, but it was peaceful. I didn't hear from Daniel. In early March, my phone rang with an unknown number. I almost didn't answer. "Hello? Gloria? This is Barbara Morrison, Melissa's mother." My stomach tightened. "Hello, Barbara. I'm calling about the wedding." Her voice was crisp, businesslike. "Melissa showed me your response. I have to say, I'm quite disappointed. I'm sorry you feel that way." "Are you? Because it seems to me you're punishing your son for being unable to meet your unrealistic financial demands." I closed my eyes, breathed slowly. "That's not what happened, Barbara. Isn't it? Melissa told me you refused to help with the wedding unless you had complete control over the planning, that you wanted them to have a small, embarrassing ceremony to save money. Lies. Complete lies. Barbara, I don't know what Melissa told you, but I know what I need to know. You're a bitter woman who can't stand to see her son happy. My husband and I are paying $40,000 for this wedding because we love our daughter and want her to have a beautiful day. The fact that you can't manage even a fraction of that says everything about your priorities. I'm on a fixed income. We all make sacrifices for our children. That's what parents do. But I suppose you're from a different generation, one that thinks more about themselves." The hypocrisy was stunning. She was attacking me for being selfish while demanding I bankrupt myself for her daughter's party. "I'm not going to argue with you, Barbara." "Good. Then you'll reconsider? For Daniel's sake?" "No." Silence. "I see." Her voice was ice now. "Well, I'll make sure Daniel knows you chose to miss the most important day of his life. I'm sure he'll remember that." She hung up. I sat there, my hands shaking, tears blurring my vision. This is what they'd done. They'd rewritten the story. In their version, I was the villain, the selfish, bitter mother who refused to help, who made unreasonable demands, who was punishing her son for being happy. They'd erased the loan fraud, the lies, the cruelty. They'd made me into a monster so they didn't have to see themselves clearly. I called Margaret. She came over within 20 minutes, bringing wine and chocolate. "Tell me," she said. I told her everything, the phone call, the lies, the way they'd twisted the truth into something unrecognizable. "Let them," Margaret said firmly. "Let them believe whatever they need to believe. You know the truth The people who matter know the truth. You can't control the narrative in other people's heads, Gloria. You can only control your own integrity. But what if Daniel believes it? What if he really thinks I'm this terrible person? Then he's choosing to believe a lie that's more comfortable than the truth. And that's on him. We drank wine. We ate chocolate. Margaret told me about her own experience with being vilified by her son-in-law's family. They called me manipulative, she said. Said I was trying to ruin the marriage, all because I'd pointed out that he'd quit 3 jobs in 2 years and my daughter was supporting him. Truth-telling gets labeled as manipulation when people don't want to face the truth. I nodded, understanding completely. The hardest part, I said quietly, is that I still love him. Daniel, even after everything, I still love him, and I don't know how to stop. You don't stop, Margaret said gently. You just love him from a distance. You love who he was and who he could be, while accepting who he's choosing to be right now. That's not giving up. That's wisdom. That night, alone in my condo, I thought about love and distance and wisdom. I thought about the years I'd spent believing that love meant erasing myself, that being a good mother meant having no needs of my own. But maybe that wasn't love at all. Maybe real love meant modeling self-respect, showing that every person, even mothers, even older women, deserve to be treated with basic human dignity. Maybe the most loving thing I could do for Daniel was refuse to participate in my own mistreatment, even if he never understood that, even if I never got my son back. April arrived with unexpected warmth, flowers pushing through the earth like small acts of defiance. The wedding was 2 months away. I tried not to think about it, but on a Tuesday afternoon, my doorbell rang. I opened it to find Daniel standing there. He looked tired, thinner than I remembered. There were shadows under his eyes that hadn't been there at Christmas. Daniel, can I come in? I stepped aside. He walked past me into the living room, and I was struck by how unfamiliar he seemed in my space, like a stranger wearing my son's face. Would you like coffee? I asked. No, I can't stay long. I'm on my lunch break. We sat on opposite ends of the couch. The distance between us felt continental. Melissa doesn't know I'm here, he said finally. I see. She'd be furious if she knew. Her mother too. They think you're the problem. I know what they think. He looked at me then, really looked at me, and for just a moment I saw something familiar in his eyes, something lost. Why didn't you just help us, Mom? It would have been so much easier. My heart clenched. Easier for who, Daniel? For everyone. If you'd just taken out the loan, none of this would have happened. We'd still be talking. You'd be coming to the wedding. Everything would be fine. Would it? Would it really be fine, Daniel? Or would it be fine until the next time you needed something and I couldn't give it? He looked away. You don't understand what it's like, he said quietly. Melissa's family has money. Real money. Her father drives a Mercedes. They have a vacation house. When we visit them, I feel like I'm not enough. Like I come from nothing. You don't come from nothing. You come from me. Exactly. The word hit me like a physical blow. He saw my face and had the grace to look ashamed. I didn't mean it like that. Yes, you did. Silence filled the room like water. Daniel, I said carefully, do you remember when you were 12 and you wanted those expensive basketball shoes? The ones all your friends had? Mom, I told you we couldn't afford them. You said you understood. But then I found out you'd stolen $60 from my purse to go buy them yourself. He flinched. Do you remember what I did? You made me return them. You made me apologize to the store manager. And do you remember what I told you? He was quiet for a long moment. Then, you said stealing doesn't solve problems. It just creates new ones. That's right. And that's what you tried to do with the loan application. You tried to steal my security because you were embarrassed that you couldn't afford the wedding your fiancé wanted. I was going to make the payments. Daniel, stop. Just stop. I was so tired suddenly. You weren't going to make the payments. Your credit is terrible. The bank told me. You have debt I don't even know about. You would have made a few payments, maybe. And then there would have been an emergency or an unexpected expense, and suddenly I'd be the one stuck with a loan I can't afford and a home I could lose. You don't trust me. You're right. I don't. Not with this. He stood up abruptly, pacing to the window. Melissa says you've always been like this, controlling, making everything about money. Melissa doesn't know me. She knows what I've told her. And what have you told her, Daniel? Did you tell her about the student loans I paid? Did you tell her about the 2 jobs I worked so you could go to college? Did you tell her I drove a broken car for years because I was saving for your future? You chose to do those things. I never asked you to. The words exploded out of him, and suddenly we were at the heart of it. The real truth neither of us had wanted to say. You're right, I said quietly. You never asked. I chose to sacrifice. But Daniel, sacrificing for you doesn't mean you get to sacrifice me. He turned from the window, and his face was flushed. What does that even mean? It means I gave you everything I could. I did it out of love, but now you're demanding that I risk everything I have left. And when I say no, you call me selfish. You let your fiancé's family think I'm a terrible person. You tried to commit fraud against me. That's not asking for help, Daniel. That's exploitation. Exploitation? Jesus, Mom, it's a wedding. It's one day. It's not about the wedding. My voice rose despite my intention to stay calm. It's about respect. It's about you seeing me as a person, not as a resource. It's about you understanding that I have needs and limits too. I do see you as a person. No, you don't. You see me as Mom, as the woman who's supposed to fix everything and ask for nothing and be endlessly available. But I'm 67 years old, Daniel. I'm tired. I'm alone. And I'm trying to protect the one small thing I have left in this world, a roof over my head. We stared at each other across my small living room. 2 people who'd once been everything to each other, now separated by a chasm neither of us knew how to cross. I thought you'd be happy for me, he said finally, and his voice cracked. I thought when I got engaged, you'd be excited. You'd want to help. You'd want to be part of it. I was happy. I am happy that you found someone. But happiness doesn't cost $23,000, Daniel. Happiness is free. This wedding? This isn't about happiness. It's about impressing people, and I won't lose my home so you can impress Melissa's parents. He walked to the door, stopped, turned back. Are you coming to the wedding? No. Even if I ask you to? Even if I tell you it would mean everything to me? I wanted to say yes. Every cell in my body wanted to say yes, to fix this, to make him smile, to be welcomed back into his life. But I knew what would happen if I did. I'd show up. I'd bring a gift I couldn't afford. I'd smile for photos, and nothing would change. He still wouldn't see me. He'd still think of me as the woman who eventually gives in. No, I said again. I'm not coming. His jaw tightened. Then I guess that's it. I guess it is. He opened the door. You know what the sad thing is, Mom? I came here hoping you'd changed your mind, hoping you'd realize you were being ridiculous and we could fix this, but you haven't changed at all. You're still just... He shook his head. I don't even know what you are anymore. I'm someone with boundaries, Daniel. I wish you'd learn what those are. He left without another word. I stood in my living room, listening to his footsteps fade down the hallway, listening to the building's front door close, listening to the sound of his car starting and driving away. Then I sat on the couch and I cried. Not the quiet, dignified tears I'd cried before. These were loud, ugly sobs that came from somewhere deep and ancient. I cried for the little boy at the fair. I cried for the years of sacrifice that had somehow become ammunition against me. I cried for the relationship that was dying despite everything I'd tried to save it. Most of all, I cried because I'd told the truth, and the truth had cost me my son. When the tears finally stopped, I was hollow, empty. I called Margaret. He came over, I said when she answered. We fought. It's over. I'm coming. She arrived 20 minutes later with Diane. They didn't ask questions. They just sat with me. Margaret made tea. Diane ordered Chinese food. We sat in my small living room, and they let me cry and talk and sit in silence when the words ran out. You did the right thing, Diane said eventually. It doesn't feel like it, but you did. How do you know? Because you told the truth. Even when it cost you everything. That's integrity, Gloria. That's strength. It doesn't feel like strength. It feels like I just lost my only child. You didn't lose him, Margaret said gently. He lost his way. There's a difference. We stayed up late, the 3 of us. We talked about our children, our mistakes, our hopes. We talked about how hard it is to love someone and let them go at the same time. When they finally left, I felt less alone. I walked to my bedroom and opened the dresser drawer. The silver picture frame was still there, wrapped in an old sweater. I took it out and looked at that 5-year-old boy one more time. "I love you," I whispered to the photo. "I always will. But I can't keep setting myself on fire to keep you warm." I put the frame back in the drawer. Then I turned off the light and went to sleep. May bloomed with apple blossoms and longer days. The wedding was 1 month away, then 3 weeks, then 2. I didn't hear from Daniel, but I was learning something. Grief has seasons. The first weeks after our confrontation were winter, cold, dark, numb. Then came a thaw, small moments of warmth, a painting that turned out well, a joke that made me laugh, a morning when I woke up and didn't immediately think about what I'd lost. I was healing, not healed, but healing. On a Wednesday morning in late May, I received a letter in the mail. No return address. My name and address, handwritten in script I didn't recognize. I opened it carefully. Inside was a single piece of stationery with a short note. "Gloria, you don't know me, but I'm Daniel's co-worker, Amanda. I'm writing because I think you should know something. Daniel hasn't been himself at work for months. He's stressed, distracted. Last week he asked our boss for a raise. When she said no, he broke down in her office. He told her he's drowning in debt. Credit cards, the wedding, a car payment he can't afford. He said his mother abandoned him when he needed her most, and he didn't know what to do. I'm not writing to make you feel guilty. I'm writing because I overheard him on the phone with Melissa yesterday. He was begging her to postpone the wedding, to scale back the plans. She refused. She said if he loved her, he'd figure it out. I don't know the full story between you and Daniel. But I wanted you to know that whatever happened, he's paying for it now. And the woman he's marrying doesn't seem to care. I hope you're well. Amanda." I read the letter 3 times. Daniel was drowning. Part of me, the mother part, the part that had worried about him every day of his life, wanted to call him immediately, to ask how I could help, to offer whatever I had. But I didn't, because helping him now would only enable the same pattern. He'd made choices, the expensive car, the lavish wedding, the bride who valued appearance over reality. Those were his choices, and he needed to face the consequences. I folded the letter and put it in my dresser drawer, next to the picture frame. Then I went about my day. Watercolor class that evening. We were working on landscapes. My painting was of the pond at the park, the one Margaret and I walked around. I was trying to capture the way the morning light hit the water, turning it silver. "That's beautiful," Linda said, stopping behind my easel. "You've really found your style, Gloria." "Thank you. There's a local art show in July. You should submit something." "Oh, I don't know." "I'm serious. You're good enough. Think about it." After class, Diane drove me home. We sat in her car outside my building, talking the way we always did. "Something's different about you," she said. "What do you mean?" "You seem lighter. Even with everything happening with your son, you seem more yourself." I thought about that. "I think I'm finally learning how to want myself," I said. "Want yourself?" Something Margaret said months ago, that we spend our whole lives wanting to be wanted. But the real work is learning to want ourselves. Diane smiled. "That's profound. It's hard. The best things are." She drove away, and I walked into my building. In the elevator, I caught my reflection in the mirrored wall. I looked different. Older, yes, but also clearer. Like someone had wiped away a layer of dust I hadn't known was there. June arrived. The wedding was 1 week away. I didn't think about it, or I tried not to. I kept busy. I volunteered extra hours at the library. I painted. I walked with Margaret every morning. On June 13th, the day before the wedding, my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered out of habit. "Mrs. Jenkins? This is Thomas Whitmore from First National Bank." My heart sank. "Mr. Whitmore, is everything all right? I'm calling as a courtesy. Your son attempted to apply for another loan today, a personal loan for $15,000. He listed you again as a reference. Did you approve it?" "No, ma'am. His credit score has actually decreased since his last application. He's carrying significant credit card debt. We couldn't approve the loan regardless of his references." "I see. Thank you for letting me know. Mrs. Jenkins, I feel obligated to mention. Your son seemed quite desperate. If you have any influence with him, he might benefit from speaking with a financial counselor. I don't have any influence with him, Mr. Whitmore, but thank you for the suggestion. I hung up and sat very still. Daniel had tried again. One day before his wedding, he'd tried to borrow money he had no way of repaying. He was drowning, just like Amanda had written, and there was nothing I could do to save him. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed thinking about the next day. Daniel would wake up, get dressed, stand at an altar beside a woman who demanded more than he could give. He'd smile for photos. He'd dance with his bride. He'd pretend everything was fine. And I wouldn't be there. At 3 a.m, I got up and made chamomile tea. I sat at my kitchen table in the dark, holding the warm cup, letting the steam rise into my face. I thought about calling him, telling him he could still back out, telling him that a wedding could be postponed, canceled, changed, telling him that marrying someone who didn't care about his financial distress was a mistake that would haunt him for years. But I didn't call, because he was 32 years old. He was an adult, and adults have to make their own mistakes and live with their own consequences, even when those adults are your children, even when watching them suffer is agony. I finished my tea and went back to bed. This time, I slept. I didn't think about the wedding on June 14th, or I tried not to. Margaret called that morning. "How are you holding up?" "I'm okay, really. Diane and I are taking you to breakfast." No arguments. They picked me up at 9. We went to the diner we loved, the one with enormous pancakes and waitresses who called everyone honey. We ate slowly, talked about everything except weddings, and when I got home around noon, I felt almost peaceful. Almost. I tried to imagine it. Daniel in a tuxedo, Melissa in white, the string quartet, the expensive flowers, the chocolate fountains, 150 guests watching two people promise forever. I wondered if he was happy. I wondered if, in some quiet moment before the ceremony, he'd thought of me. Probably not. I painted that afternoon. A new piece, something abstract. Colors bleeding into each other, no clear boundaries. It felt right somehow. At 6 o'clock, my phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't recognize. I opened it. It was a photo. The wedding ceremony. Daniel and Melissa at the altar, surrounded by flowers. She looked beautiful. He looked tired. Even in the photo, even with the professional lighting and the carefully arranged scene, he looked exhausted. Below the photo, thought you might want to see. No name, just that anonymous kindness. I looked at the photo for a long time. My son, married, starting a life without me. I deleted the message. Then I made dinner, watched a movie, and went to bed. The next day was Sunday. Margaret and I did our usual morning walk. The park was full of families, children chasing ducks, couples holding hands, dogs straining at leashes. "How was yesterday?" Margaret asked gently. "Hard, but I survived it. That's all we can do sometimes. Just survive." We walked in comfortable silence, the June sun warm on our shoulders. Life continued. Days turned into weeks. I didn't hear from Daniel. Not on Sunday. Not that week. Not the week after. Radio silence. Then, in early July, my phone rang. An unfamiliar number, but local. "Hello? Mrs. Jenkins? Tentar novamente F. continuar. This is Rebecca Chen. I work with Daniel at Morrison & Associates." My heart jumped. "Is Daniel all right?" He's fine, physically. "I'm calling because I thought you should know something. Daniel was let go yesterday." The world tilted. Let go? His performance has been declining for months. He's been distracted, missing deadlines, showing up late. Last week he had an outburst with a client. The partners didn't have a choice. I sat down slowly. "I see. Mrs. Jenkins, I don't normally do this, but Daniel listed you as his emergency contact. When HR processed his termination, your name came up. I thought you'd want to know before—" She paused. "Before things get worse." "Worse how?" She was quiet for a moment. "He mentioned something about his car payment being overdue, and I overheard him on the phone with his wife last week. They were fighting about credit card bills." His wife. Melissa was his wife now. "Thank you for telling me, Rebecca. I hope he'll be okay. He's a good guy. He's been making some rough choices." She hung up. I sat in my living room, holding the phone, my mind racing. Daniel had lost his job. He had a new wife, Massive debt, a car he couldn't afford, and no income. Every instinct screamed at me to call him, to ask what I could do, to offer my couch, my savings, anything. But I didn't, because this was exactly what Amanda's letter had warned about. This was the natural consequence of his choices, the expensive wedding, the lifestyle he couldn't sustain, the wife who demanded more than he could give. This was his rock bottom, and if I caught him now, he'd never learn. He'd just know that Mom would always be there to fix things, to sacrifice herself, to make his problems disappear. I had to let him fall, even though it was killing me. 2 weeks later, Margaret and I were having coffee when she showed me something on her phone. "Isn't this your son's wife?" It was a Facebook post. Melissa, looking radiant in designer sunglasses at what appeared to be a resort. The caption read, "Sometimes you need a girl's trip to recharge. Thanks Mom and Dad for the surprise getaway." While Daniel was unemployed and drowning in debt, his wife was on vacation. "That's her," I said quietly. Margaret's face darkened. "Jesus." "Don't," I said. "Don't be angry for me." "How can I not be?" "Because anger won't change anything. She is who she is. Daniel chose her." But that night, alone, I let myself be angry. Angry at Melissa for her selfishness. Angry at Daniel for his weakness. Angry at the whole situation that had taken my loving, sweet boy and turned him into someone I barely recognized. August arrived with heat that pressed down like a hand. I was in the library one Wednesday afternoon, shelving books in the history section, when I heard a voice behind me. "Gloria?" I turned. Daniel. He looked terrible. He'd lost weight. His clothes hung loose. There were dark circles under his eyes, and his hair needed cutting. "Daniel." My voice came out steadier than I expected. "What are you doing here?" I remembered you volunteer here on Wednesdays." "You remembered." We stood there between the shelves, the smell of old books and air conditioning surrounding us. "Can we talk?" he asked. "I'm working." "Please, just 5 minutes." I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw something I hadn't seen in years. Humility, fear, the vulnerability of someone who'd run out of options. "There's a courtyard out back," I said. "I have a break in 10 minutes. He waited. When I finished my shift, I found him sitting on a bench in the small courtyard behind the library. His head was in his hands. I sat down beside him, leaving space between us. "I lost my job," he said without preamble. "I know." He looked up, surprised. "How?" "Someone from your office called. They thought I should know." He nodded slowly, then looked away. "I can't make my car payment. I can't make the credit card minimums. Melissa and I fight every day. She doesn't understand why I can't just fix it." He laughed, a broken sound. "She says I'm weak, that a real man would figure it out." I stayed quiet. "I tried to get another loan," he continued. "The bank said no. I've applied to 12 jobs. Nothing. Everyone wants references, and I can't ask my old boss after what happened." "What happened?" "I yelled at a client, called him an idiot. I was so stressed, so overwhelmed, and he was demanding changes to a contract at the last minute, and I just snapped. Daniel, I know it was unprofessional. I know I screwed up." He put his head back in his hands. "Everything is falling apart, Mom. Everything." Part of me wanted to put my arm around him, to tell him it would be okay, to become Mom again, the fixer, the solution, the safety net, but I didn't. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked quietly. He looked at me, and his eyes were red-rimmed. "Because I don't know what to do. Because you always knew what to do." "No, Daniel. I always did what needed to be done. There's a difference." "I don't understand." "You're 32 years old. You have a wife. You have responsibilities. But you're sitting here asking me to fix your life, just like you've been doing since you were a child. Except now the problems are bigger. The consequences are bigger. And I can't fix this for you." I'm not asking you to fix it. I'm just..." "Yes, you are. You came here hoping I'd offer you money, or let you move back in, or co-sign another loan. Something, anything to make this easier." He didn't deny it. "But Daniel, if I do that, what will you learn? That you can make terrible choices and Mom will always clean up the mess? That you can marry someone who doesn't support you, spend money you don't have, and I'll just rescue you?" "She called me crazy once," he said suddenly. "Melissa." "Last week, during a fight. She said I was crazy for thinking we could live on one income, that I was crazy for not asking you for help earlier, that I was crazy for being so proud. He looked at me with something like wonder. Just like I called you ridiculous. Just like I blamed you for not sacrificing everything for a wedding we couldn't afford. Silence settled between us like dust. I was wrong, he whispered. About everything. About you. About the wedding. About Melissa. What are you going to do? I asked. I don't know. File for bankruptcy, maybe. Sell the car. Move to a smaller apartment. He swallowed hard. Maybe get a divorce. Is that what you want? I want to not feel like I'm drowning every single day. I want to sleep without panic attacks. He trailed off. I want to go back to before. Before the engagement. Before I let Melissa's expectations become more important than reality. Before I hurt you. You can't go back, Daniel. None of us can. You can only go forward. How? How do I go forward from this? I thought about Amanda's letter, about the bank manager's calls, about the wedding invitation, and the months of silence and the confrontation in my living room. I thought about all the ways Daniel had hurt me, and all the ways I'd hurt myself by enabling him. You start, I said slowly, by taking responsibility. Not blaming Melissa, not blaming circumstances, not blaming me. You made choices. Own them. And then you make different choices, better ones. You talk to a financial counselor. You have an honest conversation with your wife about what you can and can't afford. You look for work, any work, even if it's not what you imagined. You rebuild piece by piece. Will you help me? There it was. The question I'd been waiting for. Not financially, I can't do that. His face fell. But, I continued, I can give you the name of a good financial counselor. I can look at your resume. I can be someone you talk to when things get hard. I can be your mother. But Daniel, I can't be your savior. You have to save yourself. Tears ran down his face. He didn't wipe them away. I'm so sorry, Mom. For everything. For the loan. For the things I said. For not seeing you as a person. For taking you for granted my whole life. I felt my own eyes fill. I forgive you, I said. But Daniel, forgiving you doesn't mean going back to the way things were. I love you. I'll always love you. But I won't let you use me again. And I won't rescue you from consequences you need to face. I understand. We sat there in the courtyard as the afternoon light shifted through the trees. My son, broken, humbled, finally seeing me. There's a nursing home on Riverside Drive, I said quietly. I volunteer there sometimes. Last month I saw someone you might remember. Who? Melissa's grandmother. The one who was at your wedding. Daniel looked confused. Grandmother Morrison? What about her? She was sitting alone in the common room. No visitors. I spoke with one of the nurses. Apparently she's been there for 2 years. Melissa visits twice a year, Christmas and her birthday. I let that sink in. The woman who spent $40,000 on her daughter's wedding, I continued, visits her own mother twice a year. That's who Melissa learned from Daniel. That's the family you married into. People who value appearances over relationships. Who measure love in dollars and abandon you when you're no longer useful. Daniel's face had gone pale. I saw that same emptiness in her eyes, I said. That loneliness. The kind that comes from realizing too late that you traded everything real for everything shiny. Life always keeps its score, Daniel. Karma is just time and truth meeting up. He was crying openly now. I'm so sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. I reached over and took his hand, the first physical contact we'd had in months. I know you are. And I'm sorry too. Sorry that you're hurting. Sorry that you have to learn this way. But Daniel, sometimes pain is the only teacher that works. We sat there holding hands until the shadows grew long and the library started closing. When we stood to leave, Daniel hugged me. Really hugged me. The way he used to when he was small and the world was simple. Can I call you? He asked. Not for money? Just to talk? Yes, you can call me. Thank you. He walked to his car, the expensive one he couldn't afford, and drove away. I stood in the parking lot, watching him go, feeling something shift inside my chest. Not quite healing. Not yet. But maybe the beginning of it. It's been 18 months since that conversation in the library courtyard. I'm 69 now, and my life looks different than I ever imagined it would. Daniel and Melissa are divorced. It took 8 months and it was ugly. She fought for alimony despite having a job and family money. She wanted half of his debt, which was both amusing and sad. In the end, they split with nothing. No children, no property, no good memories. Daniel lives in a small studio apartment now. He works 2 jobs, assistant manager at a bookstore during the day, bartending 3 nights a week. It's not glamorous. It's not what his business degree prepared him for. But he's paying his bills. Slowly, painfully, he's crawling out of the hole he dug. He calls me every Sunday. We talk about ordinary things, his week, my painting, the weather. Sometimes we talk about bigger things, his regrets, his therapy sessions, his slow journey toward financial stability. Last month he asked if he could come visit. I said yes. He came on a Saturday afternoon, bringing groceries and offering to cook dinner. We made pasta together in my small kitchen, and it felt almost normal. Almost like the years before everything broke. After dinner, we sat on my small balcony, watching the sunset paint the sky pink and orange. "I'm proud of you," I said. He looked surprised. "For what? I'm 33 and starting over with nothing." "For starting over, for taking responsibility, for doing the hard work." He was quiet for a moment. Then, "I saw Melissa last week, at a restaurant. She was with someone new, some guy in an expensive suit." "How did that feel?" "Honestly, I felt relieved, like I'd dodged a bullet." He smiled sadly. She looked exactly the same. Perfect hair, perfect makeup, expensive dress. But I looked at her, and I didn't feel anything. No love, no anger, not even regret. Just nothing. That's growth, is it? Yes, it means you've accepted what was and moved on from it. He nodded slowly. I think about the wedding a lot. All that money, all that stress. For one day that didn't even matter. We could have gone to the courthouse, used that money for a down payment on a house, or saved it for emergencies. But Melissa wanted the show, and I was too weak to say no. You weren't weak. You were trying to make someone happy. Someone who was never going to be happy, not really. Because her happiness always required more. More money, more status, more everything. There was never enough. I thought about Barbara Morrison, about her $40,000 investment in a marriage that lasted less than a year, about how she'd called me selfish and bitter. "Have you heard from Melissa's family?" I asked. "No, it's like I never existed. The moment the divorce was filed, they disappeared." He looked at me. "You were right about them, about what you said in the courtyard, about her grandmother." I didn't say it to be right. I said it so you'd see the pattern. I see it now. I see a lot of things now. We watched the sky darken, stars beginning to appear. "Mom," he said quietly, "I need to tell you something." "Okay." I went to therapy. Real therapy, not just a few sessions. I've been going for a year now. "That's good, Daniel." My therapist asked me to write you a letter, to really think about everything I'd done and how it affected you. I wrote 17 pages. He pulled a folded envelope from his jacket pocket. "I've been carrying this for 3 months, trying to find the courage to give it to you." He held it out. I took it carefully, like something fragile. "You don't have to read it now," he said. "Or ever if you don't want to. But I needed to write it. I needed to understand what I'd done." "I'll read it," I promised. Later that night, after Daniel had gone home, I sat at my kitchen table and opened the envelope. The letter was long, handwritten, marked with crossed-out words and tear stains. He wrote about his childhood, about feeling abandoned by his father, about making me into both parents, and then resenting me for not being enough. He wrote about the wedding, about how Melissa's expectations became his expectations, about how he'd valued impressing her family more than honoring his own mother. He wrote, "You were never ridiculous. You were reasonable. You were protecting yourself. And I punished you for having boundaries because I'd never had to respect them before. I treated you like an ATM machine, not a person. I'm ashamed of that. I'll be ashamed of that for the rest of my life." Near the end, he wrote, "I think about the picture frame you used to keep by your bed, the one of me at the fair. I remember that day. I remember feeling safe because you were holding my hand. I threw that safety away because I wanted to look successful in front of people who didn't matter. I chose strangers over you. I'll never forgive myself for that." The letter ended with, "I don't expect you to forget what I did. I don't even expect you to fully forgive me. But I want you to know that I see you now. Finally, completely, I see you. And I'm sorry it took losing everything to open my eyes. I cried reading that letter. Not sad tears. Something else. Something like relief. My son saw me. Finally, after all these years, he saw me. The watercolor painting I did of the pond was accepted into the local art show. It won 3rd place. They gave me a blue ribbon and $50. Margaret and Diane came to the opening, and we drank cheap wine and laughed too loud, and I felt absurdly proud of my little painting hanging on a community center wall. I used the $50 to buy a new picture frame, a simple wooden one. I put that photo of 5-year-old Daniel inside it and placed it back on my nightstand, not because I'd forgotten what happened, but because I'd learned something important. I could love my son and have boundaries. I could honor the past and protect my future. I could forgive without forgetting and remember without drowning. The frame sits there now, next to a photo Margaret took of me at the art show, holding my blue ribbon, smiling like I'd won something much bigger than 3rd place. Because I had. I'd won myself back. Daniel is trying, really trying. He's in a financial literacy class. He's working with a credit counselor. Last week, he showed me a spreadsheet of his debt payoff plan. It'll take him 4 years, but he has a plan. He's dating someone new, a teacher named Sophie, who drives a 10-year-old Honda and spends her Saturdays volunteering at an animal shelter. She's not glamorous. She's not wealthy. But when Daniel talks about her, his eyes light up in a way they never did with Melissa. She knows about everything, he told me last Sunday. The wedding, the debt, all of it. And she said something interesting. What? She said, I'm glad you went through that. Not because I'm happy you suffered, but because the man who survived that is someone worth knowing. The man before wasn't. I liked Sophie immediately. Last week, I received a phone call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Hello? Mrs. Jenkins? This is Barbara Morrison. My blood ran cold. Barbara, I'm calling because I thought you should know. Melissa is engaged again, to a partner at a law firm. They're planning a wedding even bigger than the last one. I waited. I wanted to apologize, she said, and her voice cracked, for the things I said to you, for calling you selfish, for believing Melissa's version of events without knowing the truth. What changed? During the divorce, things came out. About Melissa's spending, about the lies she told Daniel, about the debts. And then, watching her move on so quickly, she paused. She's my daughter, and I love her. But she's also her father's daughter, and he's the kind of man who values appearance over everything. Why are you telling me this? Because you were right. You protected yourself, and I called you bitter for it. But you were just wise. You saw what was coming. And I'm sorry I didn't listen. I didn't know what to say. Daniel is a good man, Barbara continued. He made mistakes, but he's trying to fix them. Melissa isn't capable of that kind of growth. She'll do the same thing to the next man, and the next, and I'll help pay for another wedding, and the cycle will continue. Barbara, I appreciate the apology. I do, but I'm not angry with you. You should be. Maybe. But anger is exhausting. And I've learned that holding on to it only hurts me. She was quiet for a long moment. You're kinder than I deserve. We're all just doing our best with what we know. You didn't know. Now you do. She thanked me and hung up. I stood there holding the phone, thinking about cycles and patterns and the way some people learn and others don't. I thought about Melissa's grandmother, sitting alone in that nursing home. I thought about Barbara, already planning another expensive wedding. I thought about karma and how it's not revenge. It's just the natural consequence of how you treat people catching up with you. Today is Sunday. Daniel is coming for dinner. He asked if he could bring Sophie to meet me. I'm making pot roast, the same recipe my mother used to make. The condo smells like home. I'm wearing a blue blouse I bought last month, the first time I've bought myself new clothes in 3 years. Margaret convinced me. You deserve pretty things, she said. She was right. The table is set. The flowers Margaret brought this morning sit in the center. Yellow daisies, simple and bright. I look around my small condo, this place I protected, this security I refused to sacrifice, and I feel something I haven't felt in years. Peace. Not because everything is perfect. It's not. Daniel still has years of debt ahead. Our relationship still has scars. I'm still alone most days, still aging, still dealing with arthritis and high blood pressure and the ordinary struggles of being 69 years old. But I have my home, I have my friends, I have my art, I have my dignity, and I have a son who finally sees me. If my story helps one woman open her eyes, it was worth it. If one mother reads this and realizes that love doesn't mean erasure, that sacrifice doesn't mean slavery, that boundaries aren't selfishness, then every hard moment, every tear, every lonely night was worth it. We teach people how to treat us. I taught Daniel for 32 years that I had no limits, no needs, no value beyond what I could give him. And he learned that lesson well. It took losing me to teach him the one I should have taught from the beginning, that I was a person too. Dear woman listening to this, if your children take you for granted, if your family treats you like a resource instead of a human being, if you're exhausted from being everyone's solution and no one's priority, please hear me. You are allowed to have boundaries. You are allowed to say no. You are allowed to protect yourself, even from people you love, especially from people you love. Your worth isn't measured by how much you sacrifice. It's inherent. It's in every breath you take, every morning you wake up, every moment you exist. You don't have to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. You don't have to lose everything to prove you love them. You can love them from a safe distance while you learn to love yourself. That's not selfishness. That's survival. That's wisdom. The doorbell rings. Daniel and Sophie have arrived. I check my reflection one more time. This woman with silver hair and laugh lines and eyes that have seen too much and survived anyway. I smile at her. She smiles back. Then I open the door to whatever comes next. Thank you for staying with me until the end. If this story touched your heart, subscribe and turn on the bell to hear more stories of women who turned pain into wisdom. Every day, one woman, one life lesson. Share this story with someone you love. Sometimes one story can change an entire day. God bless you and see you next time.